My name's David Savage, and I've covered the Supreme Court for the Los Angeles Times. The Supreme Court may soon face a momentous question that the justices, I think, would rather not decide, which is Donald Trump eligible to run and be elected again as president of the United States? Trump, as we all know, is doing quite well. He's the front runner in the Republican field. But there's the 14th Amendment after the Civil War had a clause that's getting a lot of attention now. After the Civil War, the idea was Congress, the Union Congress, didn't want Confederates to come back into the government. So they added a clause that says no person may be a senator, member of Congress, or hold any office if they have once taken an oath to honor the Constitution and instead engaged in insurrection or rebellion. And a lot of law professors, a lot of ordinary people have sort of think, well, wait a minute, doesn't that apply, or may that apply to Donald Trump? Two very good conservative law professors, a fellow named Will Bode at the University of Chicago, and a guy named Michael Paulson, who's at a school in Minnesota, as I say, they're sort of well-regarded conservatives, wrote a very long law review article that appeared a couple of weeks ago in late August that basically said they spent a lot of time on this and said, look, that provision is still in effect. The word insurrection was defined very broadly in the 1860s and still today to say that if there's a concerted effort to use force to obstruct the government of the United States, you've engaged in insurrection. And it sure looks like all those things apply to Donald Trump. And they made one other point that I think is really important, which is that this doesn't require the Justice Department to file a complaint against, prosecute Donald Trump, that any state election official, county official, federal official who has anything to do with deciding who's eligible to run. These issues actually come up in a lot of different cases, some small matters, but somebody will raise a question, is this person eligible to be a county commissioner after he was, I don't know, convicted of some crime? So those persons get to decide who's eligible and who could be on the ballot. And they make the argument that any one of these state election officials can now file a claim and said, we don't believe Donald Trump is eligible to serve again as president because he engaged in insurrection. And that issue, once presented, will surely be litigated. The Trump campaign won't just stand back and say, okay, we give up, we're going to forget about this state. It'll be litigated, and it won't take too long once the litigation begins to get to the Supreme Court, because whichever side loses is going to appeal. So as I say, I don't think the Supreme Court wants to decide this. My guess is that the majority of them don't think that Trump should be disqualified for a lot of reasons. They really think voters should decide this. But once the issue is before them, it could be a really hard question, because it sure looks like that a lot of the things that Trump did, trying to get the fake electors, trying to get Georgia to change its votes, and then finally calling together this crowd that went down to the Capitol and broke in and stopped for a time the certification of those certainly look like they could be called insurrection. So I think it's going to be a very fascinating couple of months ahead. I don't know how this is going to proceed, but there are enough states and enough officials out there that it sure looks like somebody is going to raise this, or somebody's, and it's going to get into court, and it won't take too long, I think, to the sort of issue bubbles up, and then the Supreme Court may well be faced with deciding whether Donald Trump can or cannot run for president again.